Wounded Warrior Project empowers post 9/11 veterans and their families with life-changing programs and services.
They came to see me in the hospital, and they've been a constant in my life ever since.
We help warriors get the expert care to adjust back to civilian life.
I got the mental health support I needed to face my PTSD, and now I'm a much better husband and father because of it.
Together with a community of supporters, we make sure no warrior has to face their challenges alone.
I found adaptive sports and made connections. Now I know I can do anything I put my mind to.
Our hands-on programs, community support, and ongoing advocacy help veterans realize what's possible.
I realized it shows strength to ask for help.
I realized new therapies could work for me.
I realized a new purpose, helping other warriors.
And now I know anything is possible.
Learn more at woundedwarriorproject.org/together.
Welcome to Gold Shields. Join NYPD veterans Tom Smith and Dan Murphy. With over 50 years of combined experience chasing drug lords, dismantling cartels, and hunting terrorists. Now they pull back the curtain, sharing raw, unfiltered stories from the front lines and the heroes who stood beside them. No topics off limits. This is real. This is true crime. This is Gold Shields.
And welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy. Every week I'm here along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you today, buddy?
Baseball season soon, so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's getting to be there. Yep. Oh, you're not into March Madness. You don't care about March Madness.
Oh, no,
right?
no. That's on my TV actually right now in another room.
Okay, all right.
That's all that's on until, and then it gets kind of confusing when the Yankees start, because then it's just channel switching for all day. One inning at a time, go back to the game, go back, so, but I love it. March is the best. March Madness, best thing around.
Cool. Good stuff. Well, today we have a amazing guest we're blessed to have. He's just a phenomenal guy. Went through something in his career, in his law enforcement career, that is historic in terms of scale. It was just a really horrible, horrible situation. And we'll talk about that later. But he's just, on top of that, he's one of those rare people that takes it, evaluates what he learned from it, and decides to do something about it in a different way. And I love that kind of stuff, that type of thinking, that critical thinking, that what's missing here. And our guest today is great at that. And I can't wait for him to describe what he's doing. But first, Tom, we always like to give a nod to our friends. Let's do some of that.
Yep. Important piece of our show, Copline. We just had 2 tragic suicides down south, two female officers. I think either the same day or a day apart. The numbers are just too much, and it's every day. So please, anyone out there who needs to talk to someone, reach out to Copline. Copline.org is their website. You can reach them on that, or 1-800-267-5463. Please, if you need to talk to someone, it's all retired cops who are on the other end of that phone, all trained and with the experience to deal with what you're going through. So please reach out to them. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Don't have someone else do it. You do it. 1-800-267-5463. And as always, newspapers.com, streamlight.com, 2 big websites for us and 2 big sponsors for us, on top of a host of others that are partners with our show that we're so proud of, from Patriot Hard Seltzer to Wounded Warrior Project to, we go on. So we're so thankful for everyone who is involved in this show, keeps us going, keeps the lights on, and drives some people to watch us even more, which is great. And meaning that, subscribe to youtube.com/@goldshields. Hit the subscribe button, hit that bell, get notified of everything, comment on the show, share it, all that good stuff, in every audio channel you can think of, as well as our website, thegoldshieldshow.com, where all our partners are on there. Click their logo, goes right to their website. Check them all out, please. Now to this very special show that, Dan, we waited about 2.5 years to do this show because we wanted to do it right. And we wanted the right person on to talk about this. And what this show is going to do is show everyone, on top of what was just the initial part of what happened, how quickly law enforcement officers' lives can change. You can be sitting around having a great time doing your thing, And then in a blink of an eye, your entire world changes because of a maniac that you have to deal with. And that happened on October 1st, 2017 in Las Vegas when we're just going to say person, opened fire on a group of people. And our guest, Josh Bitsko, at the time was a sergeant in the K-9 unit, retired a captain, Las Vegas Metro PD, responded to that, went upstairs, didn't care really what was happening to him. He knew they had to get up in that hotel and stop what was going on. And we're going to hear firsthand account of that horrible day, that situation from Josh. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on the show, buddy. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I can be very choosy about the shows that I go on and the people I talk to and share. It's my story, but it's our story. It's the cops, the 51 cops on the field, and the 20 some odd cops that ended up making their way up, and the thousands of responders that day, fire department and everything else. And I'm very choosy about, I do get requests to go on podcasts, and I always do my research first. And honestly, the fact that you guys have Copline as one of the big sponsors and that you really care about, our first responders. And at the end of the day, if you don't see an officer, let's say on social media, you see an officer that maybe you don't know or don't know the agency and they end up taking their own lives. If you don't have a reaction or don't get even a bit angry, not at that person, but at the situation, then we're missing something. And the fact that you guys are taking your platform to do that it makes me want to partner with you guys. It makes me want to talk here and share my story, and hopefully, my experiences and my story personally and professionally can help people and maybe have people through my story and understand what I went through, maybe not make the same mistakes I did when it comes to coping with certain things as well, personally and professionally. So I'm honored to be here and honored to be talking to both of you guys.
Well, thank you, Josh. That's high praise from you. Thank you very much. Tom and I was going to joke and say something like your Google is not working, because if you looked us up, you would never be associated with us. We're just two knucklehead former cops who somehow got access to the airwaves.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. No, we are very big believers in that. We'll talk more about what your mission in life has become. And but first, let's get a little bit into some of your career leading up to that day. You got into the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. Tell us a bit about that and some of the things you did there before this day.
Yeah, so I hired on in 2000. I had the opportunity to work a variety of different positions and jobs. I'll tell you, policing gave a lot to me. My dad was a cop, hired on in the 70s. Retired in 2005, and he unfortunately passed away from cancer shortly after. But throughout my life, I wanted to be a cop since I was 2. You talk to some people now like, oh, I'm going to go be a cop for a couple of years and then find a new profession. But for me, there was just no other option. And so, the good thing that, policing is not only giving me steady income and, a retirement and all of those things, but it just gave me an opportunity. I feel like I've lived like a dozen lives throughout my career, and, patrol. My heart is always in patrol, wearing a uniform. It's what drew me to K-9 as a handler. I did some plainclothes gigs. I can assure you, the worst undercover that you will have ever met. I tried. I couldn't do a reversal prostitution sting in Las Vegas, where most people actually think that it's legal, which it's not. But I couldn't do it. It's what I wanted to do when I was young. And I thought, I want to be a narc cop because my dad, he did that. And so I grew up hearing stories about it. And I couldn't buy dope in a pharmacy. I kept prostitute. Like, I would walk up to a prostitute, be like, yes, ma'am. And they're like, go do it. Terrible. I learned Spanish for the sole sake that I wanted to be undercover. And it just never came to fruition. But my true love was being in patrol, being in a uniform. It's different every day. It's exciting. As I progressed through my career. So I went to K-9 as a handler, which I fell in love with. Is when I realized that, hey, the undercover thing isn't for me. And if I really pushed it, I would not only be putting myself but my team in danger if I really tried to do something that I just didn't have the skills for, even though it's something I really wanted to do. And I was just that patrol cop that always getting in foot pursuits, always kind of in the middle of it, a crap magnet, and so I had a canine sergeant come up to me. He's like, "Hey, have you ever thought about canine?" I'm like, I mean, I hunted with dogs when I was little, but I have a dog, but it's not something I ever really thought about. So why don't you come out and take a class and just see if you like it? And I fell in love with it. And because it was all the best parts of patrol, and then you don't have to do near as much paperwork. You don't get stuck on the fraud calls for 4 hours. You just go find bad guys. Or in Vegas, we carried a patrol dog and then a detector dog. So I always had a bomb dog separate from my patrol dog. So I had the ability to, you just get to do a little of everything, and was able to go to SWAT school and learn the tactical side of things, work with our bomb squad, learn that bombs are scary and you don't have a lot of control, which actually comes into play in my story when we get there. And so I promoted to sergeant in 2010 and, went back to patrol again, loved leading a small team and figuring out that even after the first couple of weeks of hating being a sergeant, I fell in love with it because, you're no longer just responsible for you.
I agree with you. I hated it at first too.
Yeah, that's what whenever I actually had a young cop from LAPD when I was just speaking at the ICP wellness conference come up. He's like, "I'm on the sergeant's list. We're having a conversation." I'm like, "Okay, my only advice, you'll figure everything else out in 3 weeks when you hate it and you're questioning what you did, it gets so much better." But when you have, I not to get too much into the story, but I had a guy come out to me. He was working for me. He'd been a cop for like 3 months. Like, "Hey, boss, I made a rookie mistake." I'm like, "Well, you're a rookie, so you just made a mistake. Let's talk about it." But just navigating that and learning it. I really enjoyed the patrol side of being a sergeant. I was talked into because everyone's like, "Oh, you need some bureau experience. You need to become a detective." So as a sergeant, I was a detective sergeant in our child abuse and neglect section. I did that for about 2 years, investigating child abuse, child death, elder abuse, elder death. A rewarding but terrible job, if we're being honest, especially in a big city like Las Vegas. As you guys know, there's a lot of just stuff that people don't talk about when it comes to that. After a couple of years of that, and I knew I needed to get back to having fun and really enjoying my job. I went back to K9 as a sergeant, and I spent another 4 years. Again, you're a sergeant, but I also worked a dog. I worked two. I had a bomb dog and a patrol dog. My patrol dog's named Loki, which we'll just say he was a lot of dog. He was a jerk, but he was my jerk, and he turned into a great police dog. We had our DVs the first couple of months that we were together, but he turned into just amazing police dog. And from there, it's like, okay, what do? You keep promoting. So I promoted to lieutenant, was an admin lieutenant, detective lieutenant. I went to internal affairs for about 18 months. Don't hold it against me.
I had to do it too.
It was one of those jobs where like, "Hey, you're going to internal affairs." I'm like, "I don't know." Like, "No, you're going to internal affairs." Like, okay. And from there, I promoted to captain. And so I wasn't as much a cop, just I dressed like one. But it's rewarding in its own way as, I was able to really lean into helping, upwards at the strip. I had more than 200 cops working for me, and, helping them through their career and doing the right thing and being a leader that, is sometimes when people promote high enough, they become more myopic and thinking about themselves and not the teams, and being able to be the captain that, I'd sit there and have a conversation with 30 minutes in the hallway with one of my cops, or they want to go do something. "Hey, let's go have a conversation." Or I see a cop going down the wrong path, come in my office and we'll have a talk about it. And so it was rewarding in its own, its own right. And ultimately I was a captain over Las Vegas Strip, which for the time I was there, felt like I worked the entire time I was there because it never sleeps. So then I never slept. And then ended up, I helped create the wellness bureau for Las Vegas Metro. The sheriff actually called me. He's like, "Hey, I want to do this wellness bureau and I want you to head it up." And I'm like, "Why me?" He's like, "Well, you've been through so much and you handled it well." And, on some self-reflection for me, it's like, well, you don't really know how to handle it because I didn't. But learning about police wellness, not only did it give me the opportunity to help cops differently than I ever had, but it helped myself a lot too. And I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing now in retirement, talking to you guys, if I didn't have that experience of just realizing how, of all the jobs that I had, it was the most important. And, for me, personally, but also like, you know, where else do you get to work where you truly get to make a difference in cops' lives? You know, you raise your hand and you put the badge on and you get to help the community, and you know that is rewarding in itself. But you know, sometimes we forget about our partners and you know backing them up, not just on tactical calls, not just when they need backup on the streets, but backing them up, you know, when they're going through a divorce, or you realize that they have, you know, they're drinking too much, or maybe not the spouse or the parent that they could be. So what do you think about like people often say policing is a calling, and I think the best cops look at it that way. I mean, you guys were called, I was called, but I was also able to do that internally and help other cops out, and I've been able to continue that into retirement, and I'm, you know, it's very rewarding, and I'm actually, of the things that I've done, I would say some of the most proud that I've been is that being able to help other cops.
And you know what? That's just as much a calling as just putting a shield on to begin with. Because, you know, Dana, we've done so many shows with this topic and on it, and we'll get into why this is so important and why we're talking about this in a minute. But if you don't learn from what you went through and then pass it on, what's the point?
Wasted lesson.
Right. Or what's the sense, you know, of internally understanding what you did and what you went through and why and how you work through it. If you can't take that experience and pass on to other people who are going through the same thing, then what are we doing? And that's what you do. And that's so much of a calling, just as much as it is when we all started this job.
Yep, exactly. And I'm going to keep going. I was able to retire young because I hired on young, and you know, I'm not looking to stop.
We're going to get into more of that later, but right now, let's get to the heart of the story itself. October 1st, 2017. Why don't you take us there in your boots?
Okay. So I was a canine sergeant, and we were training dogs. We had a group of new dogs that were going through their, you know, handler academy. And so we were about 9 to 10 minutes away from Mandalay Bay and the Route 91 Festival. And for those that don't know, ultimately what happened that night is an individual, and I agree, I'd never say his name, but an individual had taken an arsenal up to the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. He had multiple semi-automatic rifles affixed with bump stocks. Again, for listeners that don't know, a bump stock is a device that you can attach and replace the stock of a semi-automatic rifle, causing it to, when you pull the trigger, the gun itself bounces, replicating fully automatic fire. So what the cops experienced, what the citizens, what the victims experienced was they were under automatic fire for an extended period of time, which, you know, listen, if you've been a cop for a matter of time, I'm sure you've probably been shot at a couple of times in your career, but how many? That's more like you're in the military at war when you're taking fully automatic gunfire for an extended period of time. So just to kind of give an overview of what happened, 58 people were killed that night. 2 have since died from their injuries. Over 455 people were either shot or hit with fragmentation. Over 800 people injured from trampling and, you know, trying to get away. So the magnitude is obviously it can be hard to wrap your brain around when you think about it. Especially it's seemingly the bigger that an event like this is, the more you think about it in statistics rather than individual tragedy and individual lives lost. So, but just the magnitude of it was in a scale that, you know, you just don't often see in policing or anywhere else, to be honest. And so just to kind of give an overview of what happened that night leading into it. So we were training dogs. I used to keep my radio on what we called a scan mode. I could listen to every radio channel at the same time because in canine, again, it's a fun job. You just hear a code red, you hear a foot pursuit, and you go to it and you search for bad guys. That's the job. And we have multiple channels. Las Vegas is a large agency, 3,600 commissioned, over 6,000 employees. Not as big as New York. In case you guys are gonna, you know, hold that against me. You also wear stars, not shields there, but they're all the same. And So listening to all the radio channels, we're training dogs. I'm still in uniform, and another one of my handlers is also in uniform. Everyone else is dressed down because it's bad form to teach a dog to bite someone in uniform for obvious reasons. And I hear on my radio automatic gunfire. That's the first thing I hear. It's not a call for service. It's not someone call me, hey, you need to go here. It's just I hear automatic gunfire. So I look down at my radio because in scan mode, it tells you what area command or precinct, depending on where you're at, it's happening. And I look down and it's like our convention center area command. Convention center area command is the strip, the Las Vegas strip. So casinos, tourists, not somewhere you would ever hear automatic gunfire unless it was an active shooter situation. So when I looked down at the radio and I saw where it was at, I knew immediately there's an active shooter on the strip. I look at my team. I tell the cops that are not dressed out in their uniforms, get dressed out here because I don't want them arriving without their vests and gear on. And Dave and I went because we were in full uniform. And so we hop in our cars and begin driving as fast as that Tahoe would take us. I generally drive like an old man. When you have an unsecured dog in the car, you don't really drive fast or take hard corners, or you're going to hear about it and he's going to milk the rest of the shift. But I, we were scooting, found out the governor on those things are about 120. I'm driving down the freeway to get there. I hop on the phone and I call our SWAT commander, say, hey, this is happening. It's at the Route 91 Harvest Festival across from Mandalay Bay. One of the things I talk about when I teach my class is when responding to almost any critical incident, there's always going to be an amount of chaos. And that obviously goes up the bigger the incident is. Any active shooter, there's going to be a large amount of chaos and trying to figure out what's going on. So it's easy to look back on events like this and say, oh, it was one, white male adult, older shooting down on a crowd. But at the time, it sounds like Las Vegas is under attack, right? You don't know what's going on. We don't know initially for the first several minutes that the suspect was even shooting from the Mandalay Bay across the street. You have a mic open at the front of because it's a concert where the talent had ran off stage. So you have a microphone open. So now you're hearing gunshots coming from the stage because it's coming through the mic, through the speakers at the front of the stage. All the suspect has to do is move his rifle a couple inches and rounds are happening at one entrance, happening by the stage, happening at another entrance. So there was a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. There will always be that when you're responding to an active shooter. There's always going to be an amount of chaos. And so initially we're driving to the concert grounds and we have our own radio and canine that we could communicate aside from the radio that we can talk to dispatch and hear what's going on. So I called the SWAT commander. He did an all call, like, hey, every SWAT guy that's out and about, head to this scene, because we knew based on what we had, all the resources that we could get, we needed. And so as we're driving there, discussing with Dave Newton, who's the other canine handler, like, how we're going to arrive, where we're going to go. You have as we're getting closer, we realize that it's coming from Mandalay Bay because the officers on the ground who are getting shot at are still able to relay information on where this is coming from and allow us the opportunity to respond and take care of it. And you had officers that were running across the street to try and get up there. I would say most of the cops that were there were trying to have an impact. But we're still humans. You're going to have failures. You're going to have officers that, at times can't manage the emotions, that manage the chaos, manage the anxiety and all that with it. But a lot of officers were trying to have an impact and stop this guy from killing people. And so as we're arriving, we realize it's coming from the Mandalay Bay, and Dave and I are talking. We're like, let's go in through the Shark Reef. So if you picture, you have Las Vegas Boulevard. Across the street, you have a concert with 22,000 attendees, all under fire. You have people dying, people being hit. Officers doing the best they can to get people out, because also what happens during an active shooter is, and when shooting happens, what do people generally do? They hit the deck, they get down, they get low. But when someone's shooting from an elevated position, what does that do? It now makes them an immobile target. So you have officers on the scene as they're realizing what's happening, trying to get people out, to evacuate and get people to cover and get people to safety. But they're able to relay where it's at. On the other side of Las Vegas Boulevard, you have the Mandalay Bay Tower, a large hotel, casino. The suspect was on the 32nd floor, so pretty high up, had a view of the entire concert venue. There was nowhere for anybody to go, very little cover. And he had planned this meticulously for that purpose, through internet searches and, police tactics and all of that. He had a plan, which then we have to react to in the moment under fire. So Dave and I have a discussion. We go into the Shark Reef. You have the Mandalay Bay, 100,000 square feet of convention space, and then the Shark Reef, which is like a aquarium, because Las Vegas went through a period where they wanted to make it family friendly. For the listeners, for you two, if you're coming to Vegas, don't bring kids if you can avoid it, because you're not going to have as much fun. That's my 2 cents of someone that grew up in Vegas. You can still have fun. There's aquariums and all that, but you won't have so much fun. So Dave and I decided we were going to go into the Shark Reef. I asked for more officers to meet us there on the radio. And so we get into the parking lot, because had we tried to go to the front of the Mandalay Bay to go up, we would have been in direct fire of the suspect in his field of fire. There really wasn't a way to get in the front of the Mandalay Bay Tower without that happening. But because we both, we're both from Vegas, we know we were able to go in through the Shark Reef and make our way. But I asked for more officers, and, you always think, okay, I'm going to have my team. I'm going to have, SWAT team and all that, but that's not generally who's going to respond and react and solve an active shooter, right? It's going to be patrol. I had 3 detectives in khakis, a polo like I'm wearing, and a tac vest, and their pistols ready to go. And, we're a big agency. I recognize their face. I knew them. I obviously know them really well now. But they show up as part of the team, and all I know about them is they're cops and they're ready to go. And we have similar training when it comes to, because we're on the same agency, and I know the training that we have when it comes to. So that was my team. I had one K9 guy. He and I were both in our SWAT gear, because our K9 team works a lot with our SWAT team, been through SWAT school and all that. So, and almost every mission, K9 is with SWAT. So him and I have that experience and the gear. And then I have detectives that they just have the right mindset and ready to go. We gear up, make our way through the aquarium, through the convention space, and all our gear onto the casino floor. And this is like the first real eerie sensation is, we all know that there's literal chaos and horror happening outside, but they build these things so you don't know what's happening outside. There were still people gambling and eating and drinking inside the casino, reacting to us and our gear, making our way to the elevators. So as we get on the casino floor, we stop it. There's a security podium with a security officer. I grab one of my detectives. I grab a security officer. I'm like, go to surveillance, get me intel. Because again, you're going to be in an intel deficit in the beginning of this. You're going to have a lot of information, but as far as actionable intel, it's just, you have to wade through the chaos and the yelling and all of that to find out what is my plan? What do I need to do in a simple plan? It's, even from leadership or an officer that's hearing this, that you need to have that simple plan of, I need to make my way to the bad guy and take him out. Plain and simple. Like that can be your plan, but verbalizing that and knowing that can help push through some of the hard emotions of that anxiety and the fear and all that. This is my plan. We need to go do this. We need to take care of it. It was funny. Well, not funny, but so that detective's partner is like, okay, I'll go with them to security, because we still don't know. Is there somebody on the casino floor? Is there someone on the other side of this giant building shooting people? And I did a good count of my team. I'm like, nope, he has to go alone. And so there's points to this that, when you reflect or you look back on it, there's like, I always just call them like sticking points. Like, okay, it seemed innocuous. Like, okay, I know we were going up, we're going to go make our way to the elevators and get up to the suspect's room. And we're most likely going to be going up there to a gunfight. So I need as many people as I can. But also, you don't want to send a cop to be by themselves, because not all security is armed in these casinos. And, like I remember thinking, oh gosh, I hope that guy doesn't die.
Looking for powerful defense without the mess? Meet Impact, a revolutionary line of chemical irritants designed for law enforcement, military, and personal protection. With no blowback, no cross-contamination, and easy cleanup, Carry Impact delivers unmatched stopping power without the hassle. Whether you're in the field or on the street, safety should never be compromised. Protect yourself with the next generation of defense. Carry impact. Stopping power, redefined.
Patriot is a premium whiskey hard seltzer. We've carefully crafted 4 flavors that not only taste exceptional, but can be enjoyed on any occasion, anytime. We're committed to giving back 5% of all profits to the core groups we call the backbone of America. We are proud to help those who serve our great country. This is America's Seltzer, the brand that stands for quality, community, and the American spirit.
Just interrupt you for a second really quickly. The leadership piece of this is something that, there's informal leaders and there's formal leaders. And as a sergeant, it's funny. You're one of the guys to a certain extent, but you're a boss at the same time and you're a leader. So you're a sergeant and you're on the scene of this, and you've got to not just control your own emotions, your own actions, your own that. You've got to control others. And I had the opportunity to watch your body cam. And it's out there, guys. You can see this stuff if you haven't. I recommend you look at it. I'm always looking at leadership and how I want to learn from it all the time. You made a comment to your guys on the way up there about that I think was amazing. Beers are on me after this, guys. And maybe that's not the exact words, but the gist of it was, guys, we're going to be okay. This is going to be over. It's going to be a heck of a story, and I'm buying beers later. The confidence that you showed to them, that little thing, it was brilliant, yet genuine. It was part of who you are.
So I'll say this, yes and no. I said that with the whole intent is you can feel the energy of your team. I know that I was an experienced canine handler. We go on nothing but critical incidents, and I knew that I was inside. On the outside, you watch my body camera, I look really calm. I can assure you and your listeners, I wasn't. This was one of those situations where it's this is, I've never been on anything like this. I don't know what we're going to walk into. But I also know that, I have a team that's looking at me, and I can control. If I'm chaotic, if I'm all over the place, if I'm exhibiting outward fear. I was scared. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys. Oh no, this was my job, and I put my fist up in the air, and not in my city. Let's go get them. No, I mean this stuff is scary. It's real. But I could feel it, and I just wanted yep, we're gonna get beers later. This is normal, because then there's that. Oh well, if he thinks this is okay and it's gonna turn out, then it must be. I'm trying to bring them down because I also have an idea of what we're headed into. I heard this story. It was the 49ers. They're in the Super Bowl. They're in the huddle, and Joe Montana comes in the huddle, and they have one drive to go and win the game. And everyone's all on edge. And Joe Montana goes to the huddle, like, "Hey guys, you see John Candy's up in the stands." And everyone's like, "Why is he talking about John Candy?" Well, because he was just that. And then they went and won the game. And it's like, okay, well, that was intentional on his part. He's a leader, and there's leaders in all fields, private, sports, public, and all that. And it's, trying to understand what the team needs to then be successful in, our response. Right. So, but, it is. But I can tell you don't have to be you're not born a leader. You're not born fearless. It's a choice, and how you regulate your emotions and still act. And that's, one of the things that I teach and I talk about now is, you can feel these anxiety and fear and that wanting to freeze and recognize it and still push past it. And that's exactly what that was. It's on the inside, I was, my heart was beating a mile a minute. I didn't know what we're going into. I was anxious. I didn't want to, be that sergeant that got his team killed for no reason. I knew we were going into just a very dangerous, a very dangerous, unknown situation. But at the same time, it's I didn't have a problem sending people and myself going into danger. I just didn't want to make the wrong decision. That's where my anxiety was at. I'm going to make the wrong decision and get my team killed. But yeah, I was feeling inside we leave the security podium and we make our way to the elevators. We had shut down the elevators on the way there to try and easier contain where the suspect's at. And now, for those that don't know, what we're hearing on the radio at this point is you had 22,000 people at a concert automatically under fire. So what do they, you talk about ICS and we're going to evacuate and we're going to bring buses to get people out. We didn't have to do any of that. Everybody self-evacuated. I mean, I'll talk about it later to a point, but you had citizens doing extremely brave things, throwing injured people in the back of pickup trucks because it was a country concert, so there's a lot of pickup trucks. Throwing wounded people, driving into the hospital, complete strangers, risking their own lives to help other people. But what happens with that is you had 22,000 people all evacuate, go into surrounding businesses, saying there's an active shooter, bleeding, shot, hurt. So what do all those businesses do is they call in active shooters as well. So I'm hearing on the radio, active shooter at New York, active shooter at the airport, active shooter at Caesars, and all this. So this, it felt as though Las Vegas at the time was under a coordinated attack. Like that's what the information that we had at the time. I've talked with some of the people that, we made entry with, and after like, oh, we were fully expecting to breach the store and run into like ISIS. It's 2017 at the time. And that's where we were at mentally with it. So we make our way to the elevators. We get on the elevator. I'm joined by another team. We have, I have a detective sergeant from Vice with a couple detectives, patrol guys. I have my team, which is some K9 guys and patrol guys. And again, you think, oh, I'm going to have my tactical team, I'm going to have that, but you just have the people that are ready to go and handle business. We come up with a quick plan. So you had security that was brought down a couple floors after they were shot, because when the suspect, before he began his shooting, there was a security guard on the floor checking another door. The suspect began shooting through the door at that security guard, striking him in the leg, which is how we were able to find the suspect's room to begin with. Again, group effort. It's not just police. It's the fire department, EMS, security, citizens. Everybody dispatch came together. And I would be very remiss not to mention the calm, clear voice of dispatch during these events, keeping us calm. But when that security officer was brought down, what was relayed to me on the radio is you have security in a shootout on the 29th floor, and you have a suspect in the room on the 32nd floor. So I told the other team, there's a couple cops on the 32nd floor with eyes on the door, get up to them. We're going to go to the 29th floor, take care of whatever shooting is happening there, because I also knew, and that I didn't want somebody behind us that we didn't deal with to go to the room, fighting a war on two fronts, for lack of a better term. And I don't like comparing policing to war ever. So that's something that I've always tried to avoid. But we make our way to the 29th floor. We start to clear it and realize, okay, this isn't like, there's not a shooting here. Starting to realize, okay, this was just misinformation that by the time it relays, under stress from security to security dispatch to our dispatch to us, it's just that's the nature of it. There's chaos and you're going to have to overcome that. So once we realize that, my team, we make our way up to the 32nd floor. And, there's the times that I'll talk about, we were lucky, or we, just certain things happen that had to happen for it to turn out the way it did. And it's hard to talk about that during such a tragedy, but because we called SWAT as soon as we did, I had a SWAT officer who also teaches around the country, named Levi, explosive breaching, who wasn't far, who made it to the scene to have an impact. Generally, you're not going to have SWAT on something like this, but because of the nature of how far we had to traverse to get to the suspect's room, he was able to show up. So as we're going across and we're going through, the floors to get up to the 32nd floor, end up going through a door, and him and I, we almost clinked barrels of our rifles. And I'll tell you, I took a deep breath because, yes, I'm a sergeant. I was also the only person on my team with a rifle because not every cop in Metro carried a rifle. It was a specialized class and training that you have to go through. And so I was the only one on my team with one. So I had to also be the point because I knew the weapon systems that the suspect had based on what we were hearing and the amount of chaos and damage that he was causing. So I was able to take a deep breath because, yeah, listen, I've been to SWAT school and K9, but all he does is the tactical, this kind of thing. And I was able to kind of take a step back and be more of a sergeant, still there, still with my rifle, still, ready to do what I had to do, but also try and control some of the team movements, who's behind us, who's, making sure who's communicating with other teams. And, I was concerned also about a blue on blue. Anytime you have chaos, worried about stepping out in a hallway, running into another team who's, their adrenaline's up and, something tragic happening where, an officer fire upon another officer. Well, he got up to the 32nd floor with his team of patrol officers, and because he grabbed a couple of cops and it went, it was able to see the suspect's door. So that was on the 32nd floor. So when you picture it, and it's a little harder through this medium if you can't, show pictures or whatnot. You have a lot of the hotels in Vegas built around the time that the Mandalay Bay was. You have an elevator in the middle, elevator bank and multiple elevators, and then you have wings going off of those elevators. So Mandalay Bay has 3 wings going off those elevators. Long hallway with rooms on each side of the hallway, and at the very end you have double doors, which is a suite, which is one of the 2 rooms the suspect had. So we talk about tactics or fatal funnel. You have 250 yards of a fatal funnel where the suspect had already shot through the door to try and traverse. Well, Levi obviously getting eyes on it, we went down a floor to the 31st floor and made our way up right underneath the suspect's door, where there was a stairwell, fire escape stairwell, and a door that led out to his room. But again, we talk about the difficulties of responding to something. We're responding to somebody's plan, and we have to come up through our training and navigate however creative this evil person was to cause as much damage. So when we get up to the door, so you have the suspect's double doors at the end of the hallway. If you're facing it, to the right is the secondary room. So you had 135 was the suite. To the right was a secondary room that he had. To the left of his doors was this stairwell, fire escape stairwell. And so we get to that door, and the suspect had screwed that door shut with the L bracket because he was trying to funnel us down the hallway. Again, I had a breacher with me who had a small pry bar, and we were able to pop that L bracket off and open the door to see the suspect's door in the room. And when we did, so we opened the door. Just to the left of us is the double doors of the suite at the end of the hallway, where the suspect had shot through numerous times, shot through the door. So you have debris on the ground, holes through the door. And you knew that he had shot through that door. Across from us was 134, the other room that he had. Well, he had placed a room service cart in front of that door. And so when we look at it, when we open the door, we see a room service cart draped with, a sheet. And then we see wires coming from it under the suspect's door. So I know now he had rigged that with cameras to see down the hallway, because again, he's trying to funnel us down the hallway. But at the time, what are we thinking when I'm hearing multiple attacks across Las Vegas, which all turned out to be ghost calls, this is an explosive. So, we come up with a quick, hasty plan of what we're going to do. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this is probably an IED, given the chaos down below and everything that we're confronted with. So I can run down 30 minutes to our cars now at this point, through the convention space and the aquarium and all that, and grab a bomb dog, taking me out as a tactical response, and try and run a dog on it. But again, people down below had been shot. He had stopped shooting at this point, the suspect had, but in my head, it's like, we can't get medical forward to help people until we clear this and declare that a warm zone. Little did I know, our fire department, because we trained active shooters with them, violated their own policies to go forward and, provide medical assistance, extract people, get people hurt to hospitals, and citizens had done the same thing. But at this time, it's like, we need to clear this so we can get people out. The bomb dog's out. I could call the bomb squad. Again, takes a very long time to get them there, get them operational. And also we have a room with the suspect and it shot through a door. If we could even get forward and try and x-ray it and, do things like that, which we knew we couldn't. So ultimately the plan was, we're going to breach this door and, hope this doesn't explode. And if it does, then the next team will be able to come in and do what they have to do.
Have you ever wished you could go back in time and see the events that shape the true crime cases that fascinate you? With newspapers.com, it's like having a time machine to the past. Dive into more than 1 billion newspaper pages from 1690 to 2025 and relive the headlines that shocked entire towns. Explore newspapers from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond with a simple search. Read the breaking news as it happened, crime scene reports, witness testimonies, and courtroom drama. Explore forgotten clues and see how the media shaped the narrative of infamous cases. But it's not just the major stories. Newspapers.com lets you dig into local mysteries, missing persons reports, and the small-town scandals that history forgot. It's the closest you can get to being there when it all unfolded. So, if you're ready to dig deeper into the crimes that keep you up at night, start your journey today at newspapers.com. Use the code GOLDSHIELDS for an exclusive 20% discount on your subscription.
When it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit Streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
So we step out in the hallway. I cover the secondary door. Dave Newton had a ballistic shield that I brought with me, and at the time, only K9 and SWAT had ballistic shields. Now we, they're available to every officer in the field. But so Dave shielded up to the suspect's door that he had shot through. Now the guts that it takes Dave and Levi to do that, to then hang an explosive breach on a door that had been shot through with a rifle that many times, and shield and all and our gear, that still takes a certain amount of fortitude to do. So he hangs the breach on the suspect's door. I'm covering the second door. I see a camera on the room service card, so I reach down and flip it over so it's not on us. How effective that is, if he's in watching us, he knows we're there anyway, but it made me feel better in the moment. And we go back into the little, there's a landing on the other side of the stairwell, or the other side of the door leading to the stairwell that we were, it's where we were operating from. Step back in, call down to the command post that had really just been set up. By the time people get there, set up the command post and just let them know, hey, we're going to breach this door. We'll let you know what's going to happen. So we conduct an explosive breach on that door, and we have a positive breach. Now, I think sometimes what's lost is a lot of guys get in and they talk about these tactical debriefs, and we get to all the tactics and do the cool guy stuff. And, I'll tell you, I had an Apple Watch on at the time, and the timeline of my watch was way better than the timeline the investigators initially had, because my heart rate got to about 161 when we breached that door, which, when the science behind it and some of the things that I teach is like, that's right about like, you're going to start to lose fine motor skills. For me, it's, I can tell you, yes, you look at my body camera. When I threw my gear on, it turned my body camera to my face, which I got a lot of crap for because I thought I was trying to be like a celebrity or something. I just didn't really care about it at the time. But I may have looked calm, but my hand, so I had the cool guy vertical foregrip on my rifle. My hand kept going numb. And afterwards I was talking to Levi, like, why is my hand kept going numb? That's a weird thing. He's like, well, you were squeezing that foregrip so tight, no blood was getting into your hand. And that was all my stress was like right there in this hand, because I kept having to shake it out before we would do anything so I could, make sure that I was able to be effective. And I switched to an angled foregrip after, so I couldn't do that on the way. But so we breached the door, and I hear, the fire alarm goes off. I can still smell gunpowder. I can feel like, the wind from the windows that he had broken out. Now we have a door open. And we have now, initially you generally think breach and go. But really, we breached the door expecting some sort of response, right? Because he'd already shot through the door. Is that going to happen? But nothing happened. We didn't breach the door. When I look through the door, I see a scoped AR-10 rifle on the ground next to the door, which, he had set up, I believe at this point. Now he's dead, and we don't know exactly his mindset, but that was set up for our response, not for shooting down on the crowd. And you have these also dumb thoughts of anybody that served a lot of search warrants. We breach the door and I see the gun and I'm like, oh, we got the right room, which is, when you think about it, it's such a dumb thought. He'd already shot through the door. We had the room service car and we knew where he was at, but it's just those little like, okay, we're at the right room. So we step out when we didn't immediately receive gunfire. We step out in the hallway. I'm joined by another team with one SWAT officer, a couple patrol guys, and we ultimately make entry into the suspect's room. I cover the second door as the front of the team makes entry. And then once we're in, I then come in and at the tail end and we begin to clear out the room. We find the suspect deceased on the ground by one of the broken windows with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. We clear out the rest of the room. Now, the adjoining door between the two rooms that he had rented out had blown shut because he had a window broken in each one. So we did a secondary explosive breach on that second room. And when we did that secondary explosive breach, an officer had a negligent discharge. It was not Levi. I'll make sure I say that, but whether it's the stress or equipment or all that, that's not my story to tell. So we then clear out the second room. And again, when I talk about these incidents, there is a distinct lack of intelligence, right? So we get the suspect's ID, we send it down to the command post, kind of look through the room for clues, and we have multiple suspects. Is there somebody else? We're hearing all these other calls on the radio. By the end, I end up, after we get intel down, I get my team together and we go down to go to the next one. But we're starting to realize, okay, this might just be one guy. And these calls are what they are, as ghost calls. By the time we get down to the floor, officers have been sent to these other calls, and we realized what it was, to the ground floor of the Mandalay Bay. Because our goal now, we're like, okay, we got to go to the next one. Like, let's go. And this is still happening. So then I go over to the command post, which have been set up across the street at the South Central Area Command. Walk in, hand my body camera to the investigators that were showing up, and I spend the next 12 hours helping put strike teams at every property on the strip. Because again, Las Vegas had a black eye. We got punched in the face. We need to make sure everybody knew that we were doing the right thing and people felt safe.
That's a story you're not going to hear a lot. This situation, what you had to go through, the forward thinking that you had to have and your team, and everyone being on the same page going, hey, we need to do this, and this is what's important for a number of reasons that you laid out. The first aid being, administered to the victims has to, you got to clear the room first. But, you said they disregarded that, which is another just heroic incident that happened that day by somebody else. When, Josh, the one question I have, you're so jacked up with everything you do and mindset of your task that you needed to do. Once the room's clear, he's dead. At what point or when does the impact of what happened and the numbers and everything that happened downstairs kind of get to you and reach you, that what really just happened?
I love to have it, tell you that. So then I went home and, watched the news story and met with a therapist and all that thing, but it just didn't happen. I began working 12-hour shifts following the incident, because now every bag left in Vegas was a explosive device that we had needed bomb dogs and all that. And truly, I didn't want to process it. Like, it was on the news 24/7. You had the president flew into town. President Trump flew into town a couple of days after, and we got to go meet, those of us that were involved got to go meet him and like all of that. But I'll tell you, I was just more numb than anything else. So, did I realize the magnitude pretty quick? I mean, I think I realized the magnitude when I was heading there. But as far as like truly processing what happened and it's why I do what I do now, is I didn't want to. Like, I think a lot of cops are really good at just like trying to compartmentalize and trying to push it down. But at the end of the day, some of this stuff is just too big. And, you need to find help to help you through that, through professionals through that. And I didn't do any of that for years after.
So there's different types of gunfights that cops can get in, or different types of traumatic situations, crisis incidents. One of them is the one that happens very quickly. All of a sudden, you jump out of the car, something happens, you get involved. And it's over fairly quickly. And then there's like this, which is this prolonged step-by-step, or at least you reasonably believe, I'm going up to confront somebody who is slaughtering people. And I have every reason to believe I'm going to get into a critical incident and I might not come out of it. That stress is compounded because it's longer. And then having to work, and Tom and I and anybody else that worked 9/11 can tell you, 12-hour days afterwards, and being right in the middle of that critical incident all the time, dealing with the result of it for days and weeks and months, that prolongs the traumatic event in the brain of a person, right?
Yeah. And well, I mean, that's the thing is too, you can't get, let's say, listen, I'm a firm believer now at this point in my life is you have to build the resilience before to be able to, process through traumatic incidents after, but also you have to be able to and willing to put in the work after to work through and process what you've been through. And I think that it's easier to throw yourself into work and I'm going to work these 12-hour shifts and I'm going to do this and I'm going to say it doesn't bother me. But if you're a human, this will bother you. These types of incidents will, I mean, you said it at the opening of the podcast. It changes people. And don't think that it has to be the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history for it to have an effect. I mean, then you talk about the cumulative trauma of just being a cop anywhere for any amount of time. And I make sure that when I'm talking about this or when I'm teaching people about it, that, it doesn't have to be something of this level to affect you. And it doesn't have to be something of this level for you to put in the work after and really try and process it. And I didn't at the time. I really, chose some unhealthy coping mechanisms like so many of us do. And it wasn't until later in my life when I was trying to build wellness and that I realized the damage I did by not confronting it. And again, it's like you can't get away from it. I was at the gym and people would come up to me, hey, you were on the news, you did this, tell me about that. And I freaking have a hat and glasses on and I don't want to talk to people and trying to, do my 10 set of bicep curls. But at the end of the day, it's like, you just couldn't get away from it, especially something of this size. And so back to your question, when did it hit me? It still is.
And that's actually why I asked the question, because I kind of had a feeling that's what it was, that it doesn't go away. It's not one impactful statement that someone makes about, here's the numbers. That's not what it is. And that's kind of why I asked. And here's another thing. I just want to talk to you, the last thing before we get into the, your company and everything. Cops don't have an off switch because one incident happened. You don't get a break. You can have the worst thing in the world happen, which you went through on October 1st. But that was not your only critical incident that you had in kind of that time frame. And that's what I mean. People out there, cops don't have it all like, okay, hey, I went through this. I'm going to take a certain amount of time off before I deal with anything ever again. That doesn't happen. So just real briefly, take our listeners through what happened after this shooting.
Well, yeah. So 6 weeks later, Levi and I were on the same SWAT guy. We're on a search warrant for a double murder suspect, and we searched the whole house, didn't know if the suspect was in there. End up doing a breach on an upstairs bedroom door. My dog goes in and bites the guy, and in the process of me getting my dog and us taking the room, the suspect, or Loki was my dog. He saved a lot of us that day, to be honest. Is biting the suspect, keeping him occupied until we go in. Well, when I get my dog, he comes up with a gun. He actually had two. He had a pellet gun and a real gun. The real gun is the one he took off of one of his murder victims. And he put the gun to me. So then I reach out. I'm holding the dog in one hand. I'm trying to slap the gun and grab the gun and push it away. And then Levi and another SWAT officer ends up shooting and killing him. And the headline was, officers involved in 1 October breach involved in this. I mean, that kind of trauma just keeps compounding. And it is, a completely different type of scenario. Like you mentioned, Dan, earlier, is like a fast one. Yes, it was a search warrant. We were looking for somebody, but it went from, the hundreds of those that I've been on where nothing, happened like that, to all of a sudden I'm looking down the barrel of a gun and, we're shooting the guy. And again, I hadn't even began the process of trying to deal with what I just went through 6 weeks before, during the 1 October shooting. And now, you stack this on top of it. And, you talk about the emotions, and like, I felt after that one, it was just more anger, like because, using a dog generally, I never had one of my deployments result in a shooting where we ended up shooting the suspect and killing him. The whole goal of using a police dog at that point is to prevent that from happening. So, when it did, I was, angry. But one of the things I've learned, and one of the things I talk about is, anger is often the closest emotion to the surface, and it's covering whether it's fear or pain or shame.
So you go through a lot, and not to belabor or talk more about what you went through. It's, and we've talked about this already before off camera. We've discussed some of this stuff, and it's not untypical for people who are in traumatic situations, cops especially in crisis situations, because then you got to go back right into stressful situations again and again and again. It's part of it. It's the job. But you decide at some point to turn that around and do something with it. And I can't applaud you enough for that, because it's so needed in this profession, and your approach to it is different. You founded a company. Tell us about Bitsko Consulting, please. This is so important. I want the audience to hear your approach to this.
So, well, it's funny. I was just at the IACP conference in Anaheim, their officer safety and wellness symposium, and looking around and seeing we're finally starting to have the right conversations when it comes to the mental health and wellness of police officers. And I'm going to say the term wellness, to me, it's been in my title a couple of times now at this point, but I think it's so overused that sometimes you say wellness to cops and they roll their eyes, or firefighters or anyone, because it's just so overused. But when I looked around, there were so many offerings, but most everything was after the fact. It was, therapeutic services, which are needed, and, counseling and programs and all of that, trying to fix a problem. And what my wife and I have done, and she has law enforcement experience as well, and founded this company, is how do we prepare cops not only to build resilience. So I prefer resilience. Resilience is, and it's trackable. There's studies on building resilience. It's something that you can build in yourself. You're not just born with it. But how do you have the resilience to experience trauma and still perform both mentally and physically? Because on top of everything else, and every class you take when it comes to wellness, every study you read, the word stigma is going to come up. They're going to say there's a stigma when it comes to getting mental health. I agree, for police officers, there's a stigma. But at the same time, for normal people, there's a stigma. And cops are normal people too. Like, we just spent time talking about some of the professionally very traumatic incidents that I had experienced. But, cops also have lives and divorces and bills and all of that. So on top of everything else, now you have all these personal stressors, trying to be a good father, trying to be a good spouse. And like for me, around the same time, I not only had these, I lost my father to cancer. He was very young. It was right after he retired. I lost a brother to suicide. I, had both of these incidents, went through a divorce. So if we only focus on the job and the trauma of the job, we're missing such a huge piece of actually building resilience and helping our cops, because on top of everything else, life happens. So her and I came together and we decided that, okay, we need to try and we've been successful up to this point of teaching and training cops about resilience, about these are the hard emotions you're going to feel when you're responding to a active shooter or any kind of critical incident. Is, you're going to feel fear. It's just that there is fear. And you think cops don't talk about mental health. They definitely don't talk about being afraid, because once they put the badge and gun on you, and you hold your hand in the air and you swear to God and in front of everybody that you're going to protect the community, you're no longer afraid, right? That's what. Yeah. But truly, you have cops that go out and they feel fear on an incident. They think, oh, maybe I'm not cut out to be. Maybe, this job isn't for me, and that's just not true. It's just the thing is, our generation of cop, the generation before us, they would. I mean, honestly, we would just lie. Oh, no, I wasn't scared. I did about 1 October. The first couple of times I went out and did debriefs, that question will always come up. Oh, were you afraid? No, I was just doing my job. Just complete crap. Yes, I was. My heart rate would lend to that. So we've worked with mental health professionals, ones that know policing and military and critical incidents, and identify the most common emotions that you're going to feel responding to a critical incident. And it doesn't have to be an active shooter or this giant incident to feel these things. It can be a barricade. It can be a hostage rescue. It can be a gang shooting that you're running into the middle of. The day ins and day outs of being a cop, we've identified the emotions that are involved. And it's fear, anxiety, tactical paralysis, or vapor lock is what most people. And that's one of the most deadly, in my opinion. I'm not going to mention incidents, but we all know incidents where people froze outside and kids or victims died because of it. And then came up with techniques to mitigate each of those emotions in the moment, but also focusing on, so yes, if you use these techniques, you can mitigate fear and anxiety and increase, your success rate of responding to these things. But then also you build that resilience still after the fact. And we talk about that and how to then process after the fact. We have, a couple methods of, we call it the COPE method, and some self-regulation methods that I talk way more in depth in my class than I am here. But this is what to expect. Here's how you respond before, during, and after the event, and really to try and mitigate the in the moment effects and the long-term effects of what we do day in and day out as cops. So, it's Bitsko Consulting. You go to my website, bitskoconsulting.com. I just started a actual Instagram. I've always been very, let's say, social media resistant, because I do think it's a time suck, but also my goal is to get the messaging out there to as many as possible. So, you can find me as Joshua Bitsko on Instagram. My LinkedIn is where I have, links to blog posts that I write about the same subject. Because, since the last time we talked, I have started and in the process and working with a publisher on writing a book about it. Not just the cool guy, this is 1 October, this has happened. There's plenty of those out there, but really how to, in life, whether it's policing or otherwise, to experience trauma, to mitigate risk, to be a leader, and then to, live your life after.
And I mean, we could just do a show on that, on everything you're doing. And here's why this is so important, and just to lay it out to people who listen to us all the time. Cops train in the academy to use their firearms. Cops train to how to drive a car, how to make an arrest, all beforehand. Mental health issues are always afterwards. And by that time, it's too late.
Well, you think about it, you're not driving to a fight call and you don't pull over and crank out 10 push-ups to get stronger for the call, right? But that's how we treat mental health. I'm going to wait till I'm drinking too much, or, I'm having nightmares, or I've gone through my third divorce, and now I'm going to go sit down in front of a professional and hope that that's going to fix my problem. That's better than nothing, but you really I'm a big proponent of it, and I didn't do this, but I know people that have, and I've talked to professionals that, you can start therapy early in your career and learn the tools and learn how to identify the emotions you're feeling in the moment. And then that's going to help you so much more processing them after. Because listen, cops, men are terrible at identifying our emotions, where I feel good, I feel bad. That's basically it, right? And but through that process of therapy, and listen, I'm also not going to sugarcoat it. Therapy's hard. I've been in it for several years now. I still get that feeling of I'm not going to say dread, but I just really don't want to do this today beforehand. But then I always feel better after it. I know that it's something that I need to do. But again, that's why when we talk about stigma in law enforcement, it's just folks. It's just people. It's hard. It's hard to talk about hard things. It's hard to work on yourself. But it's so much more important for police officers because the levels of trauma that we feel carries over into our day-to-day lives and relationships and coping and all of that.
No doubt about it. To put in perspective, the average person deals with 2, 3, maybe 4 critical incidents in a lifetime. Maybe. We could do that in an hour at our job.
Well,
that's just working. That's not what you just described as taking now those critical incidents and making more critical incidents in your personal life. So think about that, everyone. 2 to 3 in a lifetime, and a cop's supposed to not have, an emotional struggle sometimes. Not happen.
Well, ask yourself too, how are you sleeping? Because that's usually the first thing that goes, right? And if you're not sleeping, that has an effect on every other aspect of your life. And what we do affects our sleep. Whether it's even take away the trauma and what we've all been through because we wear a badge, but shift work, diet, finding time to exercise, finding time for self-care, all of those things, they go away because of what we're asked to do. And another thing, like I said, I talk about in my class. So I teach in person. I do a 4-hour police resilience and critical incident mindset course. Been lucky enough to teach around the country and at the White House. And really, my passion is to get out in front of cops and share my story. And teach what I've learned and what we've created to try and have an impact and help. And so I've been lucky enough that, people still want to hire me and bring me out to speak. We're right there. We're like a month away from an online class that I'm going to launch on my website. So, for agencies that can't afford it or that don't, that you also have an individual can take a stake in their own resilience and their own mental health. And also I do think the way that it's delivered, it's not just that normal mental health class. Anyone that's taken my class, I show my own body care where I talk about my experience. You're going to take other things such as, tactical considerations and mindset and how to navigate these critical incidents from it. But then also it's, sometimes it's like sneaking the vegetables in with the meat, right? But I'm also going to give you tips on resilience and mental health and why it's important and how you can help yourself. So we've hired some of the best videographers, and you're not going to see me sitting in front of a computer just talking for this whole class. We have some production value, and I'm actually really proud of it, and I can't wait to launch it. So I'm excited about launching that. I'm excited about the book, but at the end of the day, the core of it is me getting out there and talking to people, because I do appreciate the interactions. I do appreciate the grizzled SWAT guy that didn't necessarily want to go to this resilience class that's going to come up to me on a break and get emotional talking about his own shooting or his own incidents, because, one of the things that I do and how I present and, there's times even talking to you guys today that I get emotional. I think as cops at times we need to be given permission to feel this person understands, they've been through it. They're talking about these things. I feel now comfortable talking about it. So, and I think that's sometimes with agencies that create wellness bureaus and they have all the resources. Here's a dirty secret about wellness. Most agencies had the resources, whether it was through EAPs, insurance, or whatever, before this whole push for wellness. Nobody used them or nobody knew they were there. And you can create a wellness bureau and have those, but if you don't have leadership that is keeping it front of mind, and you don't have people out there teaching it that have been through it, then it's still going to go unused. And that's why I'm, proud of what my wife and I have created and what we've done, because I've seen it in person, the effects that it has on people and bringing down those walls. And like, I had a review, because at the end of my class, I throw up a review. How can I make this better? I don't do the 10 boxes, 1 to 5. It's literally, how can I make this class better? You still get the more videos. It was great, but it's also the, like, I had a guy say, hey, you know what? I went home after this, after that class, and I had a real conversation with my wife about it. And he's like, it's the first one we've had in years. And so it's through those experiences that I know what we're doing is working. And, I'm proud of what we're doing, and I just want to keep going. I want to keep getting better. I want the class to keep getting better and get the message out.
I in my experience, I can't think of anybody better, Tom. We've met a lot of people, and your passion for this is so obvious. And you have the credibility. You have the career. You can stand up and speak to any law enforcement group, and there isn't anybody in the back of the room, like, the cops are great for this, at snickering, saying, who's this guy? Because you bring in psychiatrists, you bring in psychologists, we sit there, we cross our arms, and we say, when is this over? But you bring in Josh Bitsko, been there, done that, got the T-shirt, you speak with authority. And you, especially with younger officers who are just learning about the profession they're getting into, that's when they need it. Everybody needs it, but immediately the organization needs to say, this is okay. Then they have to back that up with not destroying your career for asking for help. They have to do that. That's a culture change for agencies. But for individual cops, the goal is not just to go to work and come home at the end of the day and be okay. The goal is to thrive in life and to have a post-police career life where you can thrive, where you're not carrying the baggage of all the things you've seen and done and heard and experienced. You're actually able to be that real father, parent, brother, sister, husband, son, whatever it is that you are to people in your life, that you can be there for them, as opposed to being the guy in the corner on Thanksgiving, getting drunk. I can't keep a job. I mean, we all know the cautionary tales, right? We've seen them, and we don't want that. We want this profession to be a healthy profession. It's better for everybody, right?
Well, and on top of all that, too, is be there for yourself. Life is short. We only have one shot at it. And if because what you chose to do as a profession has made you numb, and you're not, like, I don't necessarily say everybody else has to be happy all the time. You have happy and sad at the extremes, but being content and finding things that you enjoy to do, whether it's fishing or spending time in nature or going to the beach, whatever those things are, we lose those things. And so if your cup is empty, you can't fill anyone else's up, right?
That's right. That's right. So for the benefit of the audience, and Tom and I, we've already talked about this. We are so honored to be affiliated with you now. We're going to let everybody know about Bitsko Consulting. This is so important. This is groundbreaking, guys. This is new. Law enforcement is finally, through your work and your efforts, going to start looking at it in the preemptive phase, in the preparatory phase, as opposed to simply response. So I can't thank you enough for what you're doing and for sharing your story, because I know it's not easy. It's not, but thank you, because our audience needs to hear how important your work is now, and that is set up perfectly by telling your story. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you for having me and giving me a platform, because at the end of the day, it's about having that impact and getting it out there and helping cops not make the same mistakes I did. So, but I appreciate you guys.
No, we appreciate you. You're an exceptional guy, Josh. Thank you.
No doubt. And people, who listen to us all the time, and thank for that. You're going to hear a lot more about Bitsko Consulting on this show. You're going to see more of it, and we're going to make sure of that, because it's so vitally important. And Josh, it is an absolute honor, brother. Not only, and you're very humble, and we get, I think the three of us have team concept that we understand and we all live by. And you exhibited that. And thank you so much for sharing a tough story. And you're right. You do get emotional during this, even all these years later, because of what it was.
So we appreciate you doing that for us and our listeners and getting the story out, not even to mention what you're doing now with Bitsko consulting and everything. It's amazing. And we're going to be part of it to get it out there, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks for taking the time.
It's been our pleasure. Oh, our pleasure and our honor. And I can't wait to meet you and break bread with you and maybe sit in and watch one of these classes, because I'd like to get a feel for what it is, how you're doing, and probably learn a few things myself.
Same.
So this is the time in the show, and what a show to have what we do every week. But there's a reason we do it every week, because of stories like this and praying for our law enforcement officers and our first responders. When these incidents happen, they show up, and they need support. They need our prayers. They need to be backed up along with their families, because their families go through it as well, both in law enforcement and the military. Please keep them all in your prayers and acknowledge them when you see them on the street. Give them a wave, say hello, pat them on the back and say thank you. It means the world to them. Again, killer show, great show. Thank you to Josh Bitsko, my partner, Dan Murphy. As always, youtube.com/goldshields, thegoldshieldshow.com is our website. Hit it up, hit all our partners up and visit their websites and all the audio channels you can think of out there. Keep supporting us. We love you. Thank you so much. Everyone out there, stay safe. We'll see everybody soon.
Wow, huh?
Ugh.
Wow.
I mean, hey, everyone. First of all, welcome to our new overtime.
That's right.
segment. Gold Shields Overtime. This is something we're going to do and just talk about the show. And Dan, you just said it in one word. Wow.
That's it. That's right. And first of all, this is our first little foray into overtime. And we talked about it, Tom, right? We're like, after we get off with an amazing guest, we have the most amazing conversations because how we've been affected by it. And it's like, why the heck don't we share that? Because it's pretty interesting.
Right.
But
I mean, we do it all the time. Every show we do it.
Every single show, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that story. This guy's amazing. This girl's amazing. So let's get on and talk about it. But today, wow. I mean, Josh Bitsko, you're not going to get a better person to be doing what he's doing right now, right? I mean,
because it's groundbreaking, man. No one does it. To get ahead of mental health and law enforcement has never been done. I get, hey, it's hard to see what may happen mentally with someone, but why not even just be prepared for that? It's just a groundbreaking opportunity that police departments around this country are going to have. And it's amazing. But just going back a little bit, Dan, when you hear stories like this, me and you have done 111 shows. When we get involved in these stories, I sit here and don't know what to ask.
Yeah.
When you hear it and you see the emotion all these years later on his face and in his voice, what do you say? Like, oh, how'd you feel? How was that? We get tied up and lost in the show a lot and not knowing what to say.
Yeah. And he's a very real person who is very upfront about the fact that he is still fighting battles to deal with the stresses of his police career, and not just this one event. It's a cumulative effect. But this one event, if you're a cop, we've talked about this offline. This is your absolute worst nightmare you could never dream of. You're working and the biggest mass shooting of some lunatic in a hotel window upon a 22,000 packed crowd of people at a concert, and he's armed for war. I mean, you can't make that up. You couldn't make that up.
Right. I mean, Dan, me and you have responded. Think about it. Just put in perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Me and you have responded to someone with a 38 or 357 hitting 3 people on a corner.
Yeah.
And what's that like?
It's a big deal.
Right.
You're jumping, your blood pressure's up, your adrenaline's running, your nerves are all kinds. It's a big, and the information's coming at you. Half of it's wrong. Right. I mean, this guy's talking about something that dwarfs that by 1,000 times.
Yep. And I love him being just so upfront about how it hurt and how he didn't deal with it, which all of us, man, how many conversations do we have to have that, how often, Dan, me and you, including in this conversation, and we've admitted this to ourselves, How many times have we been screwed up over a case, over a shooting, over something, and someone asks us how we're doing, and we're like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Yeah.
Why? Because that's how we were brought up in this silly job.
Right.
Hey, you're a cop. You can't be, you can't cry. You can't be emotional. Just forget about it.
Right.
And unfortunately, me and you were in the middle of that.
Mhm.
Now with Josh's help, that goes away, hopefully.
Let's hope so. We want to see this turn things around, and he's a trailblazer. We want to see law enforcement, the men and women, get trained right from the beginning on how to build the resiliency and the muscle, so that way they can not just survive the incident in that moment because they were trained tactically, but survive it, thrive, get the help they need, and continue to have a good, fulfilling life, not be a mess like so many cops have been because of their experiences. So I love the guy. I'm just so happy that we had a chance to talk to him today. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, and everyone, we're gonna get together with him more, with
Mhm.
Bitsko Consulting for sure, because I mean, he's such a just genuine person and cares. This isn't like, all right, what's my next kind of kick in life after retirement? This isn't that. This
Nope.
is a legitimate concern that he has and the ability because of his experience in helping. And that's why we're so drawn to it.
Yep, and he's real. He's real. He's a great communicator. He's real. He's passionate about it, and he's got the stripes, and he can talk about it. So we wish him nothing but the best. And I don't know, Tom. This has become a theme we didn't anticipate when we first started the podcast, did we? We didn't anticipate wellness and all this other stuff coming in and being part of this show, but I embrace it.
Oh, no doubt. And we had no choice because it just
Mhm.
kept happening.
That's
We
right.
talk about this all the time. We talk about it on other shows that we're on, that we started off a certain way and real quick noticed that, wait a minute, all these guests we're having are talking about the same thing
That's
and
right.
what they went through. So it was time to address it. And that got us involved with Copline and the Wounded Blue and Concerns of Police Survivors and, a whole host of others that we're involved in now. And embrace it 100%.
Mhm.
We're all over it.
Yep. So look for more of that here on Gold Shields. It'll be a part of the stories that we have, the men and women tell. And it doesn't have to be law enforcement, it can be victims of crime. This is all a human experience. So we're not afraid to talk about it. We're not afraid to tackle it head on because we want to see people have great lives. Period. And
Period.
yeah,
So, hey, another great one. We're gonna
awesome.
have another one coming up soon, as
Hmm.
always, and thanks to everyone out there. But this is gonna be Gold Shields overtime. Just Dan and I kind of just going over what the show was in our own words and how it impacted us. And this is gonna be a weekly thing now that we're really excited about. And thank you so much for joining us on overtime. Right there.
Absolutely. Yep. Cops love overtime. We love overtime.
Like that. Attaboy.
That's right.
Dan
Sometimes
came up with the slogan. Awesome. Only took 3 years.
yeah. My parents are so proud. Yeah.
Hey, everyone stay safe out there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.